Hey guys, Tightrope here with a bunch of easy to execute micro tips that can result in big improvements in your gameplay. If you have the resources to do so, you can start construction of a tech structure in a default location by double left clicking the icon. This is very convenient, but it does have a drawback. You can reinforce understrength units from these buildings. So with the default position, I can reinforce the squad up to this point, but no further. Whereas if I manually plant the building right at the edge of my base, now I can reinforce a unit all the way out here, and that can be very helpful. Say you have a high model count squad that needs to reinforce a lot, freshly retreated into your base. You can start running it out of your base immediately, and it will reinforce off the structures at the edge of your base, leading to almost zero downtime. And for this reason, at least in 1v1, you will want to put a structure towards each exit of your base. And for units that don't have the retreat functionality, such as anti-tank guns, they don't have to pull back as far to start reinforcing, reducing their downtime, and if the anti-tank gun is under pressure from the enemy as it is pulling back, being able to reinforce it earlier can be the difference between life and death, and essentially extend the zone of safety offered by your base. You should be careful where you plant your tech structures, so you don't block the machine gun defenses of your base. And the engineers having to run to the edge of your base before starting construction does slow things down a little bit, but since units spawn out of these structures, you will make that time back and more with each unit you produce from them. And be aware that currently auto-reinforce does not trigger off these forward tech structures, so you may have to reinforce these units manually, though I could imagine this being changed in the future. You should also plant your medic structure manually towards the edge of your base, since you get aura healing anywhere within the red dotted line. But make sure the default retreat point is still covered by the medics like it is here, so low health units that have just retreated will be able to heal themselves as they are running out of your base, taking advantage of this extended range. And for the US Forces medical station, which has the field medics attached to it, by building it forwards, the medics will have less distance to run, saving time and potentially allowing them to save more men over the course of a game, which will save you manpower, since the wounded soldiers that they save only last for around 35 seconds, after which point they are lost forever. You may also want to plant your base structures manually to try and avoid having them set up in the default retreat area. Because if you have multiple units that have retreated, they can sometimes block each other at the retreat point. And if a squad is stuck retreating like this, it won't be reinforcing and healing until you move the other squads away, allowing it to complete its retreat. I noticed this happened the most with the Africa Corps default construction locations. If you have a medical truck and you strictly want to use it in your base for healing, if you box select all of your units that have retreated and give them a move command to head out onto the battlefield, the truck will start to go with them, and this can be annoying having to give it a separate command to stop. Instead, activate the handbrake mode on the medical truck, and this will lock it in place. So if you select it as part of a group and give a move order, it will stay locked in place at your base for the future healing. If there is a decrewed team weapon that you want to destroy, do not use the attack ground command on it. It is relatively inaccurate and will take you a long time to destroy the weapon. Instead, use the attack move command on the decrewed weapon. This has a much higher chance of landing on the intended target. And if you have to use attack ground on the weapon, such as if it is covered by smoke, try drive as close to it as possible to reduce the scatter. The same thing applies to decrewed emplacements. You will land far more of your shots with attack move than attack ground, though attack move does require vision of the target to work, which is not always possible to do safely. In the Company of Heroes movement system, if you have a vehicle selected and you right click behind it quite far away, the vehicle will turn around on the spot and then drive to that point head on. So if you are under fire from an enemy, you will spend longer in front of them while you execute the turn, and you will be more likely to take damage since you expose your vehicle's rear armor, making this the worst possible method of getting away from your enemy. Instead, you should use the reverse command. In Company of Heroes 3, vehicles have the same acceleration and top speed, going both forwards and backwards. As shown in this demonstration, with a Greyhound going forwards and backwards the exact same distance, takes the same time to within a couple hundredths of a second. So using reverse, which is on the hotkey R on the default grid key layout, is usually the fastest way of putting distance between you and the enemy. And since the frontal armor will be facing the enemy as well, as an added bonus, you give yourself the highest chance of bouncing the enemy's damage. If you right click a short distance behind your vehicle, with this indicated length being approximately the maximum, your vehicle will reverse that point without you having to use the reverse command. Generally, I would still recommend using the reverse command, but this can be quite handy in certain situations, such as for the LG40 recoilless launcher. It has the retreat command instead of the usual reverse on other anti-tank guns, so a short right click behind it is the only option to get it to reverse. And in general, you always want to reverse your anti-tank guns when moving them away from the enemy. Because if the enemy's vehicle attacks you while you're moving away, your anti-tank gun can simply set up and fire at it. It doesn't have to spin around beforehand, delaying its response. And similar to vehicles, if you do a long right click behind it to move your anti-tank gun away, it will turn around first and then move there head on. And that extra delay added by the turning can often be the difference between your anti-tank gun getting away or getting decrewed. Most buildings in Company of Heroes have multiple doors, allowing you to enter them from multiple different directions very easily. However, getting out the right direction can be a little bit more challenging. If you simply select the building and use the Unload Selected Troops button, the units inside will always get out the same door regardless of which direction they got into the building from. And if there is an enemy unit on that side, that can be a big problem, since units are often very clumped up next to the door as they enter and exit buildings, making them highly vulnerable to die from an explosion such as a tank shot or a grenade. Company of Heroes 3 has added a great new feature. You can order your units to retreat straight from inside of the building, and your units will always get out of the door that is closest to your base and then start their retreat. Though again, if you have an enemy unit waiting for you at that exit, this may be undesirable. And if you had multiple units inside the building but only wanted to retreat one of them, then you need a different option because it causes all of the units inside to retreat, and this is where the tab key comes into play. So with the building selected, if you push tab once, now you have the first squad inside the building as your selection, and you can simply right click in the direction that you want the unit to get out, and they will exit the building from the door that is closest to that direction and then start running to that point. Now there is a small UI bug at the moment that does make this functionality a little bit confusing. If I select the building and press tab once, I have the Pioneer selected and you can see the upgrades that are available to them, but the selected unit does not get highlighted in the UI down the bottom. Whereas if I select the building and then click on the Pioneers down the bottom, they do get the thick white outline indicating they are selected, and I imagine this is what pressing tab once will look like once the bug has been fixed. So when it comes to multiple squads inside a building, whatever squad got in first will appear on the left in the UI. So with the building selected, press tab once if you want to give the first squad in the building a command, or press tab for a second time to give an order to the second squad inside a building. And you can tell which unit you have selected by the white outline around their icon. This allows you to give individual commands to each squad inside of the building, such as get out a specific door, or retreat without impacting the other unit inside of the building. And using tab allows your units to take shortcuts going through buildings, which may end up saving some time. Also be aware that your squad does not gain access to their abilities, such as a Panzerfaust or throwing a grenade, until the entire unit has exited the building. So you need to add a slight delay before you try to execute those kinds of commands. When you put a heavy machine gun weapon team into a building, it will automatically set up facing a random direction. And given that it takes a few seconds for the machine gun to switch windows and change which direction it is facing, you might want to set the machine gun's facing direction manually. To achieve this, select the building and then right-click drag in the direction you want the machine gun to face. And the machine gun will set up in the most appropriate window for that angle. Be aware that currently there is no option to cancel this facing order, so if an enemy approaches from a different angle, your machine gun will no longer automatically rotate to fire at that enemy, and you will have to give the building another manual facing order. When trying to target an enemy squad with a heavy machine gun weapon team, it is risky to simply use right click, because the model you are trying to target may die just as you go to click, or you could simply miss your input and now you are right clicking on the ground, causing your machine gun to pack up and start running to that point, and this mistake could end up costing you the engagement. This is because you cannot stop the heavy machine gun from packing up once you start the process, and it takes around 3 seconds to pack up and another 3 seconds to set back up again. So 6 seconds total where the machine gun is not firing. A big punish for this mistake. Instead, you should use the attack move command, because if you misclick and target the ground, your machine gun will stay set up and continue firing at its current target, minimizing the impact of your mistake. That's it for this one, and if you enjoyed this guide, make sure you check out my other one about capturing territory more effectively.